Welcome back to Media7, where I'm discussing the Auckland Super City election campaign with Simon Wilson, Efeso Collins, David Slack and Vaughan Davis. It doesn't take a professional to tell that the two leading mayoral candidates are lugging a big bag of media messages around on the campaign trail. Jose Barbosa asked a man who knows how they're doing.
This is Brian Edwards. He's a broadcaster, media trainer and amateur windsurfer. We've asked him to have a look at last week's Auckland mayoral debate on Campbell Live and gauge the performances of both Brown and Banks, starting with their timed speeches at the top of the show.
In that minute, you have to talk about yourself and you have to sell yourself. And it's terribly hard to do in such a short time span. And the result is you get a lot of cliches, you get a lot of slogans.
If you give me the job, I'll get the job done. You can trust me to roll up my sleeves and deliver. Auckland, it's our time.
Brian is consistently not particularly pleasant to Banks. He's looking away all the time, which most people would think was rather rude. But also, if you watch his hands through this, there's a lot of this stuff going on with the fist. And that's the thing which is saying, strong, I'm strong, you know?
We need to deliver on transport. My opponent is, of course, now starting to soft shoe on that issue.
Banks, he is very pleasant to Brian throughout the whole thing.
My opponent is a good bloke, and he's an honourable candidate.
I think the Banks strategy is better, actually. We don't like people criticising other people. During the last election, when Helen Clark and the Labour Party were constantly attacking John Key, people didn't like it. It worked against her.
This is in our record too. Have a look at this.
You will see this. Problem? See me. Here.
I think that was the most damaging thing that has happened to Brian throughout this whole campaign. People thought he looked flaky.
Well, I could have toned that down a bit, John, but that won't detract from my passion, and Auckland needs a leader who is really passionate.
The explanation, I'm a passionate person, to me, really, that didn't come across. And I think that's going to haunt him right to the end of his campaign. Now, they showed a clip of Banks being at his most homophobic.
Don't ask me as a member of Parliament to come into Parliament like a poodle and lick and rubber stamp their fetishes into law. Don't ask me to do it, because I won't.
What you've got to do in those situations is you've got to sort of fess up to it, you've got to be apologetic, you've got to say sorry, I suppose, and you've got to say I've changed.
I've made mistakes. I've made a lot of mistakes. But make no mistake, I'm absolutely committed to making Auckland work.
Oh, thank you very much, Brian. That was extremely illuminating.
Can I just ask you something? Could Russell not be here today to do this interview?
No, I think he was on his yacht.
Because, God, you're an appallingly poor interviewer. I mean, it's, you know, normally I find it easy to do interviews, but you just made it so difficult.
David Slack, have these guys been over-schooled? They seem absolutely laden down with these lines that they're expected to deliver, and it doesn't really work for me. I don't really believe Len Brown when he waves his fist around.
It doesn't work for me either.
I'm tired of hearing about John Banks' mistakes, and make no mistake.
Not to
what's going on
affordable
here?
Progress.
Yeah.
The thing that strikes me about this is a statement he made in the Dominion Post late last year, John Banks. He said, if I wear my heart on my sleeve, they won't elect me. Now, this is a man who understands that he has to stay on message because when he's off, he is an unguided missile, and anybody who listened to him as a talkback host knows the truth of that. He is a man of great passion, and sometimes the cerebral cortex isn't keeping up with that, and he pays the price for that. But you know, you don't want to. The magic of this, the idea of it, is that you don't perceive the lines to have been constructed. They come out as though they were freshly baked, like Tony Blair talking about the People's Princess. It's not working at all, because in the hands of somebody who's not skilled, it's just clunky. And they both suffer to some extent from that. The benefit for Len Brown is that he's doing an awful lot of mileage, and he's meeting people, and he's talking unscripted, and they're liking what they see. That's helping. It's also interesting, you know, Brian Edwards talked about the fact that Banks was striking a good tone and it was working for him. But I understand that he's pulled out of 3 debates this week subsequent to the outcome of that Campbell Live debate. The one with Mayoral TV, one with Radio Live, and I forget the venue, but that kind of tells you that they think it doesn't work, and they actually want him to be more scripted.
That's interesting. I mean, Viso, is it important in South Auckland for candidates to get out and press the flesh and go to meetings, go to community groups? Is that what works out there?
Yeah, I think it's really important for candidates to get out there and actually meet people and, you know, kiss babies and, you know, throw your fist up and stuff. But I'm not sure. I haven't seen John Banks out south, and so you know, maybe he's not interested in the vote out there. Maybe he's just given up on that. But I know that Len Brown has been out there and he's been going to those community meetings, and I think he knows that community really well. He knows that electorate very well, so he knows what's going to get them to vote. The challenge for Len Brown and anyone to the left is, do they have the people enrolled to vote? I think the big point for Pasifika communities is the point that David was making earlier when he was talking about, you know, that 2-hour program. There's a qualitative methodology that we use now called talanoa, and it's about our communities just sitting around and having a good discussion about things and getting away from these quick sound bites, which is what the media seem to think is what's necessary for people. You know, give them the old 2-minute sound bite and hopefully they'll leave thinking, oh yeah, I'm the mayor that you can trust, or I'm the mayor that's going to get the job done. I think Pasifika communities are looking for someone who's actually going to engage with the community and say, here's what I have to offer. Maybe an Obama type kind of charismatic person is someone that maybe that this community is looking for.
I'm not sure that it's fair to condemn either of the candidates for pulling out of debates and so on. The two of them have debated every day of this campaign against each other. Every evening they are somewhere standing up, delivering the same speeches, the same responses, and you know, over and over and over. I mean, they've done more than 30 of them, as I understand it, and so, you know, there's an awful lot of that. Of course, from the very start, Banks knew he wasn't going to win Manukau, and Brown knew that he was. And the election has really been fought in Auckland Central, to a degree out west, and of course to the north. It's been really interesting that Brown, you see, I thought one of the things Brown would do by now we'd be hearing from business leaders who support Brown, that undercuts Banks directly. We haven't had that. I thought we'd be hearing from cultural figures who would be standing up for Brown. That you know, Lucy Lawless has the Green Party that she supports, and I thought there'd be a lineup by now of Brown supporters. He hasn't managed to generate that kind of support, which I think is surprising because they will have been trying. Yeah,
it's probably a troubling degree of indifference there amongst those people you thought should come out.
Yeah. I think the cleverest thing he did was get out before everybody else late last year, so that the left had their stated candidate.
And of course one of the consequences of that is that he cut Bob Harvey off, but Bob Harvey hasn't endorsed Brown, and that's really significant, and nor is Mike Lee for that matter.
Vaughan, just this week John Banks has started to do something new. He's been making robocalls, recorded messages, and on quite a big scale. I'm not sure whether that's going to work.
I think any intervention is likely to increase your participation, increase your response rate. But if you're a Banks hating household, no amount of robocalling is going to make any difference.
Might make him sound warmer.
Yeah, well, there's a John Banks. So the arena that's really interested me, and talking about the town meetings and in South Auckland, has been the social media side of things. And this would have seemed to be, if they were looking to Obama, this would have seemed to me, and they certainly were looking at Obama and Len Brown's graphic design, the place to experiment and the place to engage and the place to have dialogue. But honestly, the two main candidates, you might be familiar on Twitter with the Greylin weather tweet, which tweets the weather every hour. You can get a better conversation out of the Greylin weather tweet than you can get out of John Banks or Len Brown. I mean, Hamish Keith started it, and I jumped in. We spent 2 or 3 weeks trying to get a response to a question from Len Brown. It's one way. I was here. I did that. Maybe he's so busy doing things he's got no time to reply. But when you get
the interesting thing is that I think they tried. Banks had a launch party for his website. Len Brown got a lot of fans signed up to his Facebook page, but it doesn't seem to have gone anywhere.
No, it hasn't. And then maybe they just don't have the time and they don't want to delegate the discussions. But again, get to the fringe. Simon Pratt, you can talk to him about anything.
Just one question. You ran what was a very successful campaign for quite some time, where you created the Orange Election Man campaign for the Electoral Commission. I get the feeling that that's a bit missing from this one. I had to go and look it up, and I'm still not sure I know which ward I'm in. I'm not sure who my local board is. I don't think many people really know who they're voting for.
Yeah, I think there's still a big job to be done. Without sort of blowing smoke up our bums, if we don't know which ward we're in or who we're voting for, we're a bit sort of chickened. So there's certainly a job to do, and maybe it comes down to the candidates and the parties to push that barrow if central government's not doing it, because this is just one of many elections. Auckland's not the whole not the whole country. So.
And we've spent most of the time talking about two candidates for mayor and not about the council or local board candidates.
Exactly.
So we tried. Well, thanks to Simon Wilson, Efiso Collins, David Slack and Vaughan Davis. But before we go, in the tide of media since Saturday's earthquake, nothing has conveyed the reality of the constant aftershocks like Paul Nicholls' animated Christchurch earthquake map. It's a fine use of public data. And that is our show. We'll be back with Media7 at the same time next week. Until then, goodbye.